Hi everyone, Joe Garth here, creator of Brushify.io. In this video, I'm going to be showing you my complete process from start to finish for creating an environment scene in Unreal Engine 4. I'm going to be going click by click, showing you how to install Brushify packs, how to create a landscape, how to paint down foliage, and even build a little log cabin using the in-engine modeling tools and a little bit of help from Megascans. If you're a complete beginner to Unreal Engine and you want to know where to get started on how to build your own little environments, this is going to be the video for you.
So yeah, very first thing I do is click launch on 4.25. This is a new version that just came out recently. But yeah, I'm just going to go through the whole process of, sort of setting up Brushify packs and installing them. Create a new project. I'm going to go games. I'm going to go to, let's go third person, because I love to have the little character running around in the map, and it's a really good way to see the scale. So, what should we call this? We've got to come up with a name. I really want to do something like with a log cabin in the woods or something, so we're just going to call it log cabin. Who knows what I'm going to end up creating. And I usually keep all of these to defaults and hit create project. So with this, I'm going to try and just use Brushify on its own. I don't really want to create, a height map in some external application. I just want to show what's possible with Brushify and just some Unreal packs. So I've got a completely blank project here, third-person project. I'm going to quit out of that, go back to the Unreal Engine launcher, and we can just start to add a few Brushify packs. So what project could be a good basis for this? I think the Natural Roads pack could be really cool. So let's show all projects. I'm going to just type in cabin, log cabin. I haven't actually enabled the Brushify stuff for 4.25 yet, but will be coming very, very soon. So I just have to choose 4.24. That's a nice little trick, by the way. All you need to do to install Brushify to any engine version is just click show all projects, and then you can install even to a future version. So if you want to try the preview builds and you want to try Brushify with the preview builds, yeah, you can just do that. Take show all projects, type in your thing, in this case log cabin, and then you've got it from this little menu. So I'm just going to choose 4.24, click add to project. And what else could be useful? So that's the Natural Roads pack. I'm going to also add the Forest pack. So yeah, same thing. Going to do that. Hit add to project. And if it says something like overwrite files, I always just hit yes, because basically all of the Brushify packs share certain files like shaders and textures. So when you're first installing all the packs, it doesn't matter if you overwrite them because they all share the same files and infrastructure. The only time that can be a bit of a problem is if you already have a project ongoing and you've made changes to the files, in which case maybe it's better not to overwrite. It's better to decide what you've modified and what you haven't, and so on. Anyway, I don't really want to get too bogged down in the technical stuff, so I'm just going to start the log cabin project. So I've installed 2 packs now, and there's the example map. I'm going to start with something, a little bit of something. I'm going to start with the roads, the Natural Roads level. I really like how this level looks because it's got a nice overcast lighting set up for you out of the box. Usually when you first install some Brushify stuff, it will take a bit of time to load. So because this is a new project, it's got to load and sort of compile a few shaders. But that's the first time you start something up. So don't worry too much if it takes a long time to load the first time you start. So yeah, see, it's like a few hundred shaders it's got to compile. Yeah, now we're in the Brushify Natural Roads pack, which is a really nice looking scene, I think, to start playing around in. So I'm going to go to world settings, and I'm going to change this to the third person guy. So run around. Oh, I don't want it to be that when you hit play it goes to the player start. I want to make sure I come down here and go current camera location. Now he starts wherever my camera is placed. Great. Awesome. Okay, so there's our little level. Looks really cool. I'm going to delete some of the objects from the scene so we can make our own level. So first thing I'm going to do is select all of the set dressing. Boom, deleted. I'm also going to go into the modes panel and delete some of these roads out because I don't really need them. So I'm going to go up to the modes tab and then I'm going to click on landscape. So click splines. Oh yeah, perfect. So first I'm going to click on splines and then I'm going to click on each of the control points for the roads. So this map is used as an example of all of the different natural roads that you get with the natural roads pack. So we're just going to have to go through and remove all of the splines by clicking on them like this and then deleting them. Let's make sure we just delete all of that stuff. All right, next one. And all I'm doing is just shifting and clicking one of the control points and then select all connected control points and then hitting delete. Okay, perfect. And then I'm going to go to the landscape again. I'm going to go back here. And I'm going to go to paint. And then I'm going to actually take one of the paint layers, grass, and I'm just going to fill the whole scene in with grass. So now I've got pretty much a blank scene now. I'm also going to flatten out the terrain. So let's just select with the flatten tool. In this tutorial, we're not going to go into a huge amount of depth with all the different tools. So if you're just a newcomer to Unreal Engine, you want to see what it's all about, what's possible with this tool, how you can quickly build environments, how you would take Brushify packs and use them to build your own spaces, and take the sort of advantage of everything being ready, set up for you. This is how you go about it. So yeah, I'm going to delete all of these cameras out of the scene because we don't need any of the cameras that came with the example level. And then let's jump in again. Now we have a completely blank grass scene. So I just deleted lots of the stuff out of it. And I'm going to start by, let's start by trying to create a little bit of a forest. So the first thing I usually do to create forests is get trees. All I need to do is come up to the content panel, content, Brushify. So all of the Brushify stuff, all of the meshes that you see in the screenshots on the product pages and everything. So you go to Unreal Engine 4 Marketplace, just go Brushify, type it in, now you'll get all the packs. And yeah, so all of these are my Brushify packs. All of them are sort of like starting points for your own levels. So, if you're building a tropical map, just get tropical and see how it's set up. You can go in and you can delete some of the objects and start building your own stuff, sculpting your own terrain, placing your own trees. And that's a little bit of what we're going to be doing today. The two I'm using here are Natural Roads and Forest Pack. So Forest Pack's really cool. It's actually got some screenshots in ArtStation that I took recently. Yeah, here. Yeah, so Forest Pack is basically, you get these nice trees with it, maple trees, cedar trees. You also get all of the grass and stuff on the landscape and the rocks, all of that too. So we're going to be using this pack to sort of dress up this natural road scene. What's really great is that it's possible to combine these packs and create your own completely unique new environments. So I'm going to go back up to modes and click select. And in the content browser, we can now start dragging and dropping in some of our trees. Yeah, there's some trees. We can just drag them in. But obviously dragging them in like this is, it's a very, very slow way of doing it. So I don't usually do that. The way that I like to work is if we go to modes, foliage, I'm going to pull this across over here. Take a bit of time to set up all my panels and stuff. You can do that too. I usually just put everything up here in the top right. And then drag and drop that in. And then I select them all and then click. Oh, hey, now you can see we're really cooking with gas now. Got a lot of trees being painted down. And because the sort of settings are already configured, you can see that everything already looks pretty nice already out of the box. There's one thing I'm going to alter, which is the way that the post-processing volume works, which is I want to make sure that we lock off our exposure. So I'm going to change it to manual exposure. Don't worry if it goes down like that, a bit crazy. And I'm going to change exposure compensation to, like, what am I going to change it to? 12. Nah, 11. 11 is good. That looks good. Okay, great. So now I don't have to worry about the exposure going crazy or anything like that. Perfect. Ooh, exploring the forest. So let's make a nice little scene somewhere. So what do we want to do? I want to find some sort of clearing. Can move some trees around here and there. Let's try moving this one here. Trying to avoid some repetition. And here I'm just using the foliage tool with the select mode. So you can do a bunch of stuff. You can like lasso select a bunch of them, or you can just do individual select. And all this menu actually changed recently to this little bar up here. So don't get worried if things change in the interface, because things change. You have to get used to it, have to adapt. So I'm adapting to the new 4.25. And I grab this one, move it in front of there a bit. Oh, I don't want that one to look exactly the same, so maybe I should just rotate that around. Put that there. To move individual trees sometimes. Why not? Not a very efficient way of doing it, but it works. Okay, now we have sort of a clearing here. Let's add some more trees right into the background. So paint again. I'm gonna go just save this thing. I'm gonna go to bookmarks. Set bookmark 1. Okay, so now if I go running away, I could always go 1, and then I'm back to my piece of art, which is not really very impressive yet, but let's see what we can do. I'm going to paint some trees back here and see how they look. So you can see they don't really have shadow and stuff right now. We're going to have to change some shadow settings to make that work a little bit better. With these trees, I can really just go crazy because they are Brushify trees. They're all optimized, blotted. Everything's set up out of the box. You don't have to do any crazy setup to make everything work. Okay, so a few little trees in the background there. I don't want to cover up that mountain there. I really like how it looks. So I'm just going to put a few here, make it look a bit thicker. But that mountain I want to keep because I like how the mountain looks in the distance through the trees. Maybe I don't care about that later on. Who knows? All right, cool. Okay, perfect. So next step I'm going to take is I'm going to save, always save. Now I'm going to go to the modes panel and go to landscape. Now this might turn out completely horrible, and if that's the case, I apologize. You know, maybe I don't actually like it and this isn't a very good piece of art in the end, but these things are all a bit of trial and error. So I'm going to create a little bit of a downward slope. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller and then paint more of a slope here. Lumps in the forest, little lumps. Not sure why, but there are. Maybe that each tree has got a little bit of a lump underneath it. Maybe that helps. Little lump of terrain. And as you can see, I haven't really been using anything other than this normal sculpting brush for now. But obviously what's really cool is that I could actually use the alpha brush, which is right here in circle. So you can go to alpha. So it's just this little, so instead of circle, choose alpha. And then in the content browser, you can go here, make that a little bigger, go to Brushify alpha brushes. And nicely, I've already got an alpha brush that comes with the forest pack. I can just drag and drop that alpha brush into the texture slot. Usually takes a bit of a second to load because it's quite a big texture. It's like 8K. Put that to 3. Set the clay brush. Set the brush size to the maximum. And maybe not the maximum because this is a very small little landscape. Turn off auto rotate. Always set the clay brush out. And then let's try and find an interesting looking shape. That one's a good one. Okay, so, and then I set the tool strength really high and click. Oh, it's the wrong landscape I'm sculpting on. Yeah, make sure you have the right landscape. It's landscape 1 I want. There we go. So you can see how I've got some little detail coming out in the landscape already. If I go to the unlit mode, or sorry, lighting only mode, and click, you can see all that detail that's coming through. Just as a side note here, I wanted to mention how the Brushify alpha brushes are actually generated. So all of the alpha brushes that come with Brushify are actually generated using real-world height data. Using real-world data gives you a lot of advantages when you're trying to create realism and lots of detail. The other great thing is that the Brushify Landscape Automaterial pretty much takes care of the texturing for me. So you can see how the slopes automatically got this sort of rock texture, and it even procedurally spawned a few rocks on the slopes as well. These sorts of features, when used in combination, help me to work really quickly, and do things in minutes that would normally take me many hours. So we've made a nice little interesting mountain. It's not in our shot though, it's somewhere over here. Maybe we want to make another shot of our log cabin from this side, and then we maybe want to have some big background mountain here that looks somehow impressive, or not really a background mountain, but like a big eroded area of some kind. Will that actually look good for a second? Maybe a bit rotated. So here I'm just sort of rotating and then replacing the that looks cool. And that's really one click. So I just click, bam, now I have it. Oh, click, bam. Here, rotate around a little bit, click. And then of course I've got like 4 different brushes, so I can choose a different brush. If I don't like how one looks, I can rotate it or choose a different one. There we go. Looks cool. But yeah, this is a very low resolution and very small landscape, so you don't have to worry too much on a map that's this size. So that's how I sort of generate little distance mountains. All right, so next thing is to start looking at placing some sort of little cabin here. And I think what's missing is that there's no distinction between the forest and this sort of clearing. So I want to do some texture painting. So I'm going to go to, what am I going to go to? Landscape. And I'm going to drag that over here. And I'm going to go to paint instead of sculpt or manage. Make sure you go paint. And then I'm going to go to the paint data. I'll just change my brush radius. I think it's really cool how all of the stuff is in this place here. Just have to keep looking for it. All the old stuff, you know, it was all on the modes panel. It was kind of crammed in there, but now it's a bit more like Photoshop. Everything's at the top here. It takes a bit of getting used to, but I think it's actually a pretty good upgrade that they've made. So what should we paint down? We've got mud. Ooh, squelchy. See how it looks. It's kind of a mud looking layer. And we've also got puddles. I just need to make sure I assign a layer info to that. So if I go in here and type layer, oh, I don't actually have one. So I have to go in. So I just have to hit the little plus here and go weight blended layer. And then I can just put it in the layer infos folder in my map. Hit save. And that's basically done. Go to puddles. Oh, there you go. I've got some puddles. Don't worry too much about them tiling like that. You only need to paint them in one little area. Generally, I only use puddles like this, so I just take the radius of the brush, take it down to like 100, and then I paint in a few puddles here and there, you know, like this. And if I ever see anything super repetitive, I just delete it. So now we got a few little puddles that we're going to put around. And maybe it's been raining and stuff kind of gathered in certain places. I always try not to put a puddle like on the top of a slope. It's better if there's, you know, a slight, basically if you take the puddle and you put it on, you know, slight incline like this, maybe the puddle's on the bottom. It makes a little bit more sense, right? because puddles don't gather at the top of hills in nature. So I'm still thinking about nature at this point. Let's just make some little ones here and there. And yeah, here as well. I am really making this up as I go along, so if this turns out horribly, well, maybe I just won't upload it. But we'll see how it goes. I really like using my own tools, guys. Like, to be honest, I think, you know, obviously I'm very biased. I'm always going to be using Brushify stuff because I made it. But I just, yeah, haven't really found a much quicker way of working in Unreal. You know, especially on little maps like these that people seem to really want to make. So, all right, so we've got our little clearing. Maybe it's not quite big enough for a log cabin. Let's see what we can put there. Maybe we make a crossroads. Who knows? All right, so what have I actually got to build a log cabin? I've got some props and stuff. I got this one. But I'm not really sure, like, I don't know if I can actually build one because, yeah, it's something that requires some modeling. But let's just see how it goes. I don't want to be in this mode. I want to be in select. There we go. Perfect. So this is what you put down when, you know, things are really boggy in the when it's really, really wet. It's like turn off snapping. It's like people need to walk through still, so let's put up a couple of these. I think the positioning of them is a little bit weird. Let's put them there, maybe. So with Unreal Engine 4.25, there is actually this new experimental modeling tool that lets you model completely real-time in the engine. So it's really, really cool. So I thought for this video, I might as well just try it out with this little scene. So at this point, I'm going to exit Unreal Engine 4 and I'm going to install the Brushify Urban Buildings pack. And the reason I'm going to do that is that I want to use a shader that only comes with the Brushify building packs, which is the Brushify Master Material. The Master Material lets me model without the need to constantly create new UVs or put a lot of work into UV mapping. So it's going to be really useful for this next part. Done. All right, let's check how that's working. Oh, yeah. So should start installing Urban Buildings pack. I've got too many projects. Yeah, this one. So now we've installed the Urban Buildings pack. And yep, we are gonna go back into my level. Oh, cool tip, by the way, if you want to change the level that starts up, you can just go to the project settings and change it to, well, whatever your level is. Mine is natural roads in this case. Edit to startup map, natural roads. Perfect. So, let's delete that one. Maybe I'll delete that one later as well. Let's make like the foundation, I guess, of our awesome thing. Oh, we need to enable the modeling tools. It's called something. Yeah, here we go. Modeling tools editor mode. Found it. Yes, I would like to do it, and then I'll hit restart. Yes, I want to do that. And now I'm going to get the awesome modeling tool. Hopefully it's not going to take me too much time to actually model this log cabin, but we're going to see. I mean, we should try and make it as simple as possible. Like, it's not going to be an amazing model. But then again, you know, it is what it is. So the first thing I'm going to do is throw a primitive into the scene. So I just go on ground plane. And then I'm just going to click and then hit complete. Because that's all you need to do. You just need to add one element. And then now I've actually got this little box. So what am I going to do? I'm going to grab my axes. Can I transform it? Oh, I can transform it. Oh, that's very cool. So I'm guessing it's poly edit. I'm not super amazing at this tool yet because I've only really used it once or twice in the preview builds, but we'll see how this goes. So we've got a box, but it's not really textured. So I'm gonna go, well, we could just apply this wooden texture, and that's really cool, but it doesn't give us much options and flexibility. However, if we go to Brushify and then Materials, Master Material, now you can see I've got this M_Master Material. And if I go into the presets folder, you can see I've got presets for a lot of stuff. I've got like brick, concrete, glass, metal, stuff for the landscape, pavements, plaster, tiles, wood. So wood is great. So let's duplicate one of these wood materials and we'll call it like cabin. And I'll drag and drop it onto here. Now out of the box doesn't look very good for a log cabin, so let's try and tweak it a little bit. I think this was actually for one of the buildings, the Urban Buildings pack, where it needed to be quite dark wood, and yeah, that's why it looks that way. So let's set some of the tiling settings back to its default. Let's set the intensity to its defaults, brightness defaults. We don't need the damage stuff turned on. Let's turn all that on. If you want to see how that looks, it's just a cool little damage effect. And this is the reason why I'm using this shader. This shader works without the need for UVs. So, okay, sounds a bit crazy, but I'll explain what I mean. So there are two different types of texturing on this shader. One is using this base map, which is the normal UVs, and the other is called this overlay map. So if I'm going to remove all the texture from the base map, and then I'm going to reduce the amount down. And then I'm going to get that wood texture, which I just lost. But yeah, I'm going to get it. I'm going to go into textures, wood 01. I'm going to put it on the overlay map, albedo texture. And I'm also going to put the normal one on as well, because that's also cool. And we're going to see what happens. As you can see, it's actually texturing this thing without any UVs, and things aren't looking terrible. So, okay, let's change the color. Yeah, I need to turn down this and increase this. Yeah, perfect. Now I'm getting actual color. Yeah, sometimes you have to make sure the base map amount is 1 and the base map brightness is 0. Then that map doesn't actually get used, and we're using the overlay map. So I'm going to move that out of the way now, and I'm going to explain a bit how this works with the UV-less workflow. So as you can see, as I move that up and down, it's got texture, and I haven't actually had to do anything to generate that. There are UVs on this model, but those are kind of being generated by the engine in the background. We don't need to do anything to make that happen. So yeah, we're just going to see how far we can get without UV maps and with the basic modeling tools that come with Unreal Engine 4. These modeling tools are brand new in 4.25 and they're completely experimental. If you're a newcomer to Unreal Engine, don't worry about this part. I really just wanted to show that even modeling is possible directly in the Unreal Engine editor without learning an external application like Blender. The chances are you probably don't need to model assets from scratch like this anyway, because Unreal Engine Marketplace has such a huge collection and plenty of free assets to choose from. So this part of the video I just decided to speed up and sort of show the overall progress that I make in modeling directly in the UE4. Here you can see me assembling the base of the structure, and I'm always jumping into the game to check the scale and everything like that. Here I dropped a cylinder into the scene and made it 6-sided, so it's like a hexagon, which is similar to the kind of logs that you get in these sort of log cabins. And then sort of scaled the hexagon cylinder up, and yeah, eventually put a nice texture on it. I'm pretty much just reusing the same button over and over again, which is in poly groups, and it's poly edit, and I use that to edit the actual geometry. So if you're someone that already has a handle on how to use the gizmos, how to move the camera around, you can already get pretty far with modeling basic shapes in this Unreal Engine 4 modeling tool. And here I'm just duplicating all of my logs and moving them up on the Z-axis to create the walls. There I've just dropped in a cube, which I'm going to tilt at a slight angle to create a roof. So I'm really just using the same tools pretty much over and over again. Poly edit once more. And switching up the texture I've always got a reference open that I'm constantly looking at, and also double checking that I can get quite close. And then I drag out one huge polygon for the whole roof, another one for the other side. And we're already starting to look a bit more like a little cabin. For the door, I just place it outside. It's just another cube. Make sure these sort of rails that come at the side of the porch are also extended out. Here I'm using the extrude function and just extruding out to make a little door frame. And then I slot that in over the top of the door, give them some textures, some materials. I tweak the door color a bit so it goes, so it's a bit more of a green color. I just thought that looked nicer for some reason. I think one of my references had a green door, so. And I don't make real windows. I didn't actually do a real interior for this. I just made some sort of fake windows, you know, that you can't actually look inside of. And this is actually the sphere is actually used as a little door handle. So yeah, really there's not much to it. And obviously, you know, this isn't going to be some super polished game assets, just for this one piece of artwork, and just to sort of demonstrate how quickly you can, you know, model little basic shapes in Unreal Engine. It's really amazing to be able to do this all in Unreal Engine without having to leave the application, without having to export things, which is just great. And, you know, hopefully sometime in the future I can actually build Brushify assets in this way and, you know, avoid using something like Blender altogether. Not that I don't like Blender, I absolutely love it, but it's just super convenient to be able to model in Unreal Engine 4. So, very exciting. So, okay, let's go to the landscape. Let's do a bit more. Now we've kind of got our wooden cabin done. I'm going to go and do some work on the landscape. So I'm going to go to sculpt, and I'm going to sculpt a little pond here. I'm not going to use clay brush. Turn that off. I want it to be realistic though. So, little deep, but not that deep. And let's go back to here, and we're going to go into the content, and then Brushify materials folder, water, ocean. Drag and drop this little ocean here. And, well, out of the box, the settings are made for a big ocean. So I need to tweak some of the material instance. So I make a new material instance, drag and drop that in. And then I'm going to clip this into the terrain. And the setting I want to change is fade distance. Because I want this to be a really tiny little pond. I don't want it to be a massive one. At the moment, all the settings are set for a huge ocean, so you can see it's a bit weird. It's not looking correct. I mean, maybe it's like a little pond, or maybe it's a lake. We're not sure. Imagine how lucky you would be to have a little pond or a lake right outside your house. My brother's got a little lake next to his house, and he's always sending me these Instagram or like Facebook. I think, yeah, on Facebook. He's sending me all these Facebook pictures of him jumping into, and videos like of him jumping into his lake, his own little private lake. You'd think he'd be a millionaire or something, but no, he's not. He's just, for some reason, very lucky. So yeah, I always wanted to have my own lake. Maybe one day. Oh, I went on the wrong menu. I need to go on landscape. Sculpt. Yeah, here we go. I want to get rid of a little bit of the thing there. Just want a little. Now, there's one saying that I always like to repeat, which is the foreground makes the image round. Something I learned from someone at some point. And yeah, so I need to make sure that there's always this little bit of foreground here at the front that I'm using. Okay, I'm going to tweak the shading on that water because it just looks crazy right now. And I don't like how that looks. So I'm going to make sure I tweak it so that it looks a little bit more like a little pond. and not like an ocean. So let's change the foam amount. We can have a bit of foam, but we want to make the distance down. You can't actually see that, can you? Let's make it a bit bigger. So foam distance, we can have the foam amount, crank it up really high, and then we can see what the distance does. So it's kind of the distance from the shore. And usually in ponds, you do get a bit of that around edges. But yeah, you barely see it. Like it's like that. Very, very small. So super subtle. Just make it really small. Yeah, don't need much of that. The normal bump, we can reduce completely. We can just go crazy, make it really, really low. I'm just going to make it like 0.2. This one like 0.02. Oh, no, not that one. That's the Z offset. Sorry, the Z, the blue channel. We don't want to change the blue channel. We want to keep that the same. So now we've got like a very placid looking pond. Looks very, very nice. Wow, this guy is very lucky. He can walk over to his little pond out of his front door, walk around in his pond. Splashes everywhere. Let's paint down a few more trees because I don't see why we should have such a an empty forest. Like it should be like forest everywhere. Maybe we can paint forest in places where we don't see the mountains, so there's always going to be nice mountains there. Like here I don't really care about not seeing the mountain because yeah, it's like I want to hide the distance, hide the horizon, you know. Don't worry about it being perfect. No one is judging here. The trick, I think, with foliage is not to paint it everywhere, but paint it in like clusters. And of course, I'm not using the procedural foliage tool. You can do that as well. Okay, real quick, let's do that. Let's explain how you use the Unreal Engine 4 procedural foliage tool. So yeah, first thing, go edit, editor preferences, go procedural, and then take procedural foliage, done. And then go to the modes panel. And then you want to go to it's actually called the create panel now. So instead of modes panel now, it's actually called place actors, sorry. So place actors, and then you want to go into type procedural foliage volume, just drag and drop that in. And if we go there and take this little guy, we can scale him up, scale him both ways, doesn't really matter. And now if you go to the details panel and scroll down, you can grab a foliage spawner from the Brushify Procedural folder, and we're going to use foliage trees green. Just drag and drop that one right here onto my foliage spawner, and then I'm going to hit simulate. Bam! And now look, you can see I've got trees everywhere. Can't see the wood for the trees. That's too much, so I'm going to go on the foliage types. I'm going to select all the foliage types, and I'm going to click edit. And now I'm going to go to you can see that I'm editing all 12 at the same time. I'm going to go to clustering, and instead of 2, I'm going to turn this down to like 0.4, and then hit resimulate again on the procedural foliage spawner. Or maybe I'm going to go to 0.3. And now you can see it's kind of spawning all the trees in clusters, which is really, really useful. So if you don't want to do a lot of work with the painting and stuff, and you just want to place lots and lots of trees really, really fast, you can get these big, big foliage spawners and just place them at the edge of the maps, like at the edge of the map, like this. And now, you know, you can see I'm placing all of these trees in a huge cluster. So without width, now I've just made those. And then you can alt and drag and then simulate some more. So now I've got another one And I can take this and put it on the other side of the map. And again, simulate. So now if you look over there, I've made all these new trees. But I kind of like that horizon over there. So looks cool. Oh, these trees in the background, I said I was going to fix. So I will actually fix those now. Because they look, if you notice, they look really, really bright. And that's actually because the light isn't affecting them. The shadows aren't affecting them. So to fix that, if you go to the light source, you can change the dynamic shadow to 10, and we change the distance to 200,000. So you can see now we've actually got like a bit better distance on our settings. So if we go back to where we were before, see how they're horrible and bright? Now if we put 10 on the cascades, put a 0 on that dynamic shadow distance, and suddenly we've got much nicer looking foliage in the background. You'll also notice that there are kind of like really low polygon looking trees in the background. That's because the LODs are at 5. You can also get rid of that for screenshots. If you really want to take nice screenshots, you can go foliage distance scale and set that to like 10. And now you can see that I've got like really nice foliage everywhere, you know. So that's really useful as well. And actually, even without LODs, it's not that bad in terms of performance. So, but usually if you set it to 1, you get super fast performance, because that's the way that you're supposed to get it for the game. You know, you're supposed to have those settings set for the game. Okay, so let's go to smoothing tool. I'm going to smooth out this a little bit more because I think it's a bit too jaggedy on the edges of this pond. Jaggedy. Jaggedy is not a word. Or is it? Leave a comment in the description below. No, I'm just kidding. I don't care. Maybe we should make like a little longer lake here and like give him a little pier, or... Oh, yeah, that would be a really good idea. If there was like a little pier thing here where he's got like a couple of like fishing accessories or something. Okay, so walkways. Let's put that here. Ah, there we go. Hey, this looks like a little pier. Or something. It looks like something, that's for sure. Maybe he made us a little pier like this at some point to like, you know, store things on. I guess he's storing his stuff on there. Or maybe he uses it for fishing. Or maybe he just really likes to make things. That looks a bit too flat on, doesn't it? Let's maybe move that over here. Maybe it goes over here then. And then we make one here. I don't know, I have to figure out my way of doing things. I think that's okay. That's okay, actually. That looks alright. For some reason, that looks alright. That positioning. Let's put a fence around. Put a fence around the property. Let's put a fence over here. Because we don't want to let people in. No one's allowed in this property. I'm not going to put them everywhere because I'm super lazy. Oh, you're going to see how lazy I am in these videos if I keep making more of them. Because, yeah, I don't know, I just can't stand work. I like to make life easy and simple, and that's why the prospect of doing everything in the editor is such an amazing prospect for me, because I don't like to do things. I don't like to have to constantly switch between different tools. I like to do things all in one tool. Oh, this will look way better if I open up the scene a little bit like this, I think. Oh yeah, let's maybe do that. This is 3D. We can do what we like. We can move things around the way we like. If we don't want to have something in a certain way, we don't have to have it there. We can change it. Let's see what we can do here. Maybe you have too many of those. Okay, let's change the bookmark up a bit. Set the bookmark to here now. And then maybe this is like a little bridge thing that like goes over the lake. I don't know. Oh, it's confusing. I'm not sure what I'm doing. Maybe I'm making like a little bridge that goes over the lake here. That like maybe there's something on the other side. See, I'm completely spitballing. I have no idea how this is gonna go. How this is gonna turn out. It could be really weird. Okay, let's do that and then like that. Like now it's like a little bridge. Oh yeah, okay. So now it's like a little bridge that we've got sort of in the middle for some reason. And this is how you would dress up like lots of areas in games, right? If you're working on a game, you'd just be like, well, I'm a level designer, I guess I'll just kind of come up with something and try and make it look good. Oh, looks like the landscape messed up a little bit there. Don't worry if that happens, just move the camera around, then everything fixes itself. And then you're okay. So it looks a bit like it's like a figure of 8 right now. So we need to change it a little bit so that it doesn't look quite as lopsided. Sorry, it's quite as like that kind of perfect shape. So I'm gonna put a little bit of randomness to it. Maybe not like that, but I'm gonna change up somehow how it looks. It's all real time. That's the great thing. We can change things, we can model things in real time. We can do whatever we want in this world because it's our world. It's our little world. I think that's too small, that little thing. We can scale it just a tad. And that looks better. Okay. I think I scaled I think the model for the door is a little bit off. We need a bit more height. Ooh, I've got to be careful there because I have actually got some more complicated modeling shenanigans going on. So I need to really go in and make sure I select all of those. And even the ones at the back. Because I don't know, I'll admit this, I don't know how to do a loop select in this tool. I'm sure it's possible. I don't know how to do it. So I'm going to do it the long and slow way. Alright, we're getting there. A bit smaller. That looks a bit weird. So leading lines. We're going to have this have a little leading line in, and this as well will have a slight leading line. And then, well, we can already do like that country road thing. Sorry. We can already do a natural road from the natural roads pack. So I'm going to go to modes, landscape, and then I'm going to go to manage and then splines. And you know, we deleted all those splines at the beginning. Well, this time, well, we're not going to make a massive one like that. We're going to make one a little bit smaller. So we'll change that to 100, maybe 100 or so on the half width. Half width. No. Let's make one like that. Okay, and now we've got 2, and now we go here. And all I'm doing is hitting control and click. So I've just got like one end selected like this, and then I just click control click, and then control click, and then control click, and so on. And then this goes off, you know, forever into the distance. And now we can see Yeah, we got a nice little spline here going. But it's useless. It's useless without having a mesh and a material to assign to it. So Brushify, obviously, the natural roads pack comes with the materials and the mesh and everything you need already set up. So just go s_road plane, just drag and drop that in. Oh, sorry. There's one thing you need to do, which is you need to make sure that you go to segments rather than control points. And then you're going to add a spline mesh to the segment, not the control point. So yeah, just add on this little menu, just hit the little plus, and add a new element, and then drag and drop the mesh onto there. Same thing with the material overrides. Yeah, you can just drag and drop something. Maybe I'm going to go with mud, because this is all very muddy anyway, so we might as well add more mud to the mix. This is a very squelchy looking mud material that I've got. And then I'm just going to embed this into the terrain. Here I'm going to make it kind of disappear because maybe it gets a bit less muddy there. There I'm going to tweak this. And this is the Natural Roads shader, the spline from the Natural Roads pack, which has got this really, really neat fading function. So if you actually embed this in, you can see how it's fading off really cleanly. So it's not like this hard line. It just has a nice little gradual fade. Yeah, and then you can obviously run around on this thing. But it's a good thing to make it a little bit above the landscape. It's a bit too narrow right now. So, and yeah, if you want to make sure that the landscape deforms to the spline, if you want to make sure that that happens, you can change it to, you can click on this, you can select certain control points and then, sorry, splines, and then click only selected. And then it will conform the landscape to that selected spline, which is really, really useful because it means you don't have to, you see what it did there, just make sure it all works perfectly. If you don't want to have it adjust quite so much of the landscape, you can change this side fall off and then do it, and it will change a little bit, but it won't change as much. So keep an eye on that. You can see the fall off here, like that's how much it's actually going to change and affect, but you can reduce that down and then it won't affect as much stuff. So side fall off down, and then click the segment and then hit only selected, deformed. Make sure you don't click all splines or something like that, because then it will project, or sorry, it will deform all the splines on the whole level. So you don't want to do that. Usually, maybe you do. Up to you. So let's move this up so it's not clipping. How do we look from our camera now? Maybe I want to change the spline that I chose. Sorry, the texture that I chose for the spline, because now I'm seeing it. I don't like it. You know, it's all about choice. But I've got many, many different textures to choose from. So let's go segments, switch to a different one. Let's change it to this one. Well, that's different. This one looks cool. It's kind of a, yeah, it's a bit too glossy though. Let's try this one. Let's make a bit more of a deform going on here. Don't want it to be obvious that it's you know, a road that someone painted. It needs to have a little curving to it. Little bits of curviness. Ooh. Okay, great. Let's save that. I really feel like I need something in the foreground. Something like little rocks or something that sells it. Not sure what it could be at this point. Let's see. Let's see what we can do. Let's maybe put some little pebbles or something in there. I mean, there are these, there's a procedural foliage spawner that comes with the grasslands pack. And I think this is actually a procedural spawner for the rocks that's included with all of the Brushify packs. So if you check in grasslands cliffs, you probably will have that folder. And yeah, I think you do. I think you have that folder. And then you can use the rock scatter. So let's show you how that looks if I just generate that. Oh, I didn't make it big enough. Let's make it a bit bigger. Put it here. Simulate the rocks. Unable to spawn. If you ever get that, it's just because it's struggling to find places to spawn things. And that could be that. Yeah, there we go. So there's a big rock that's spawned there now. That's cool. Maybe that does work. Maybe we like that rock. Do I like it? Always ask yourself if you like something before you decide to keep it. Let's put this rock here. Maybe it just... Maybe not like that, but... Maybe like that. Little rocks, just little rocks that go next to the pool. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's okay. It's all right. You can see the clouds going over the sky. There's actually these scrolling clouds. If you can see closely, that they're actually scrolling across the terrain. That's really, really nice. It's actually done in the light source. So if you go in the light source, you scroll down to the bottom, you can see the MI cloud slow, and you can watch those scrolling over the terrain. It's very nice, very relaxing. You can also change that for, in the material instance, you can turn it off, the speed. You can just double click the material instance, go inside, turn off the speed, and then bam, now it will just stay in one place. So if you're an artist and you just want to make a still shot and you're sick of the clouds scrolling over, just do that. So, okay, next thing, let's get rid of that. Maybe we're gonna set our, let's set our offset a little bit to something nice and then just leave it there. Yeah, it's okay. Good enough. Good enough. All right, and then let's grab that big... Well, we were supposed to be doing something in the very foreground, so let's grab this again. I'm going to make it the size of the foreground. And then I'm going to put it right here. So it's right on the front of where I am at. Right here. And I'm going to change the foliage types. I'm going to go and edit both of those. Ooh, what am I going to do? I'm going to change the ground slope angle. So they slope. So they basically spawn from 0 to 90 degrees, which is a bit of a change from the default, which is always, you know, limiting it to only spawning on slopes. I'm going to change the growth. I'm going to make them go on procedural scale. And then, yeah, we're just going to have them spawn. And then we're going to go initial seed density 3, resimulate. Ooh, there we go. There we go. That's cool. I'm going to turn off allowing static because it actually spawns on static meshes. So I'm going to disable static mesh. Now it won't spawn on the meshes because that looks a bit daft, to be honest. To have a rock spawning on a fence, you don't want that. That's not good. I'm going to make the minimum size a little bit smaller too. Okay, now we're getting there. So we've got these little teeny tiny rocks, and that's what I want to get. I want to get little teeny tiny rocks going. Tweaking some of the settings for the number of steps. The seed density I can reduce a little bit. So yeah, we're gonna get there eventually. Seeds per step. Just a matter of tweaking. If you ever mess up, it might take a while to place all of the stuff. So I think I just messed up and actually placed tons of stuff. So if that ever happens, it might crash your engine, but don't worry. That's why we always save all the time. Well, now we're getting some nice little scatter rocks going. It's very, very nice. And these aren't expensive rocks. I mean, obviously we're not really shooting for a perfect real-time scene, but you know, perfect like performance, super high performance real-time scene, maybe we'd use less rocks. But because we're making a nice, like, you know, little art piece, we're just gonna try we're just gonna try to use a few. If you don't like the seed that you get, by the way, you can change the seed, because this seed, I don't know why, I just don't like it. I can change the distribution seed by just going here and changing it to some other value. And now I can change, oh, I got one in the water, that's not so great. Well, maybe it is great, maybe it's awesome, maybe I love it and I want to keep it. I can get the distribution seed back. Yeah, that's cool. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tweak that one rock. So I'm going to select it in the foliage and then select thing, select tab. Then I'm going to make it a bit smaller. Okay, cool. So maybe I like everything else in this, but I had one thing that I didn't like. I think there's too many of these as well here. And usually I delete any ones that look too similar. Or that, you know, just stick out to me somehow. Like this one. Just sticks out to me. I don't know why. It just doesn't look good. It's not got a shadow, that's why. That's one of the reasons why I'm not liking it. Why doesn't it have a shadow? We should fix that. We should just fix things. Fix everything. We also want to have a little shadow here where the fences are and stuff as well. So that would also help. By default, this lighting is really, really nice, but it's actually very, very overcast. So as you can see, it's yeah, it's because we wanted to have those trees have lighting. So if we want to have the trees have lighting, we also have to sacrifice at some point the lighting in the foreground. But what we can try and do, let's just set everything back to its default settings. If we just don't increase the distance on the dynamic shadows that much, we increase it just a little bit, we can get a little bit more out of it. Okay, perfect. Now we've got something. Oh, I wanted to actually paint in the forest a slightly different texture, because right now it's still, this is all grassland texture. It's all grass texture. And, you know, it's really cool little grass, but would be really nice if it was a little bit more forest-like inside the forest. And there was a bit of a difference. So I'm going to paint down some forest. Choose forest. There's a layer info already there, so I can just paint it down. It always compiles for a little bit. But actually, I've noticed about 4.25 is that compile times are much faster across the board, which is really good, because that's one of the biggest complaints that especially newcomers have to Unreal Engine. If you're not used to using an engine that compiles code all the time, you know, especially, so for instance, CryEngine has all of the shaders pre-compiled, which is amazing because, of course, they're all done for you. But it obviously lacks a bit of the flexibility of being able to visually connect together shaders and handle things in that way. So, but you know, that's usually the biggest complaint when people come from CryEngine, is that they find that they find it really difficult to cope with the, you know, shader compiling coming up every 5 minutes, and you know, causing headaches. So now we've got a few little forest things going on inside the forest. Forest things going on inside the forest. What am I talking about? Now we've got a few little rocks spawning in the forest as well. So this rock layer is, so this forest layer is actually intended for inside of forests. There's a few more. There's less grass, there's more rock, there's little flowers. Stop trying to explain your art, dude. Just just you get the picture. So usually I just place them at the bottom of trees like this. Can't explain things. Image is a 1,000 words, right? So I shouldn't try and explain why things look a certain way or something. I just end up getting tongue-tied. I'm just going to keep putting more of these down. Anyway. Yeah, that's cool. Let's go over here again. See what we can see what we can do. Maybe we can put a little bit of detail around this rock here. Maybe we can type in 100. I'm really getting used to this now. I really like how it feels. So you can see how I'm integrating the rock now a bit better. That looks really good. That's great. Brushify, it just handles all this stuff automatically. It just adds all of this detail. You don't have to really worry about setting that stuff up. Once it's all done, it's all set up. It's all set up. So obviously I make these videos because I want people to buy my products, and I think that I also think that they're great products, and this is a great workflow because it saves so much time. Obviously, like, I made this tool originally, like this landscape material, I made it originally because I wanted to save a lot of my own time. I didn't want it to be that I was having to set up landscapes from scratch every single time. And I didn't really find anything on the marketplace that really fit the bill. So yeah, that's why I started making my own shaders, and then I worked on a project eventually that needed a landscape material, and I was like, well, we spent a long time. I destroyed my perfect rock. Let's go back. I spent a long time basically working on the project with someone else's landscape shader, and it was just not working very well. And I'd spent like 6 months on it, or a year on it, something like that. And then at that point, I realized after I came off that project and it was over, and I had a few months to sort of just like reflect on it, I was like, wait a minute, why don't I just build my own? Because I had a lot of shader knowledge by that point in Unreal Engine, and it just made sense. So yeah, so that's what you're seeing now, is sort of the culmination of all of those different ideas from different projects and stuff. And yeah, so now we're in 2020 and we're 3D modeling in the Unreal Engine in real time. So that's incredible. Feels great. And it's so cool just to be able to build a piece of art. And that's really the most amazing thing about all of this, is that I can build a piece of art and I can walk around inside of it. It's not just an image like this. I can actually go in and, I can use it. And it's useful for many different things. Like, it could be used as a VR thing, or it could be used as a cinematic, or just any number of different purposes. Okay, so one of the last steps that I'm going to do is I'm going to now put in a cinematic camera and just make everything look a bit prettier. So let's do that. I'm just going to go to Place Actors, type in Cine. Okay. And then I'm going to actually get the Cine camera, and I'm going to right click and go Snap Object to View. And then I'm going to look through the cinematic camera. Okay, so when you first do that, you're going to get this weird thing where it's sort of, super bright. The first thing though, because this is a real film camera, it's got like a lot of camera settings. If you're not a photographer though, I'll just give you the rundown. Basically, current focal length is the field of view, so you can tweak the field of view. All photographers are going to hate me for saying that, because it's, there's a lot more to it. Current aperture, that's basically, how do I explain this? If you go lower with the aperture, it will brighten the image and give you more depth of field. That would be, in a nutshell, how it works. I'm going to go aperture 1.2 because it means we get lots of depth of field on our camera, and it opens it up fully. But you know, in real life, you need like a really expensive lens to do that. But anyway, we can use the most expensive lens in the world in the Unreal Engine. Metering mode. I'm going to change it to manual exposure, and then I'm going to change the compensation to what we had before, or similar to what we had before, 7, or maybe 7.5, a little bit brighter. Yeah, something like that. That's okay. I don't mind underexposing a little bit, because later we can always tweak that. I'm going to change the sun angle. Let's see what happens when we change the sun angle. Like if anything happens, you know. Oh, that does look cool. That does look nice. Okay. Yeah, I think that actually is a nice difference. I always like to play with the lighting. That's the great thing, is working in real time. You get real-time lighting, so you get to choose. You get to really pick your lighting situation. I want a bit stronger. No, maybe. A little bit. Okay, that looks okay. Let's change the post-processing settings a little bit. I just noticed this is kind of leaping out at me, that this is too gray. Just looks weird. I think I'm just gonna make it a little bit. We can still have it, but just not too much of it. Little things, little polishing stuff that we're dealing with now. Let's go back to the Cine Camera Actor and tweak some of the stuff here. Chromatic aberration. Whoa, that's like the zombie. Like I'm dying of something, you know. I've got a zombie, and the zombies have infected me, and now I'm like, I'm running out of running out of health. No, so never do that. Never put too much chromatic aberration. I always put it at like 0.1 or something. A little bit is fine because it makes it look more realistic. It makes it look like a real camera. It makes it look like a camera that has actual defects to it. The other thing that people overdo a lot is vignetting. Don't overdo the vignetting. Maybe set it to like the default. Maybe 0.5 is okay if you really want to go crazy, but I wouldn't go any higher. I just think it's one of those cheap shots. You know, it's one of those cheap effects that people tend to abuse a lot. What else? Color grading. Yeah, don't go too far with it. Only touch it if you know what you're doing, and if you think that you can get better results with it. So I usually, maybe I increase the contrast a little bit on this one. Obviously you can get a lot out of color grading, so you can change the mood somewhat with the grade. So, you know, mine wasn't really an early morning scene, and maybe I can make it look like an early morning scene, or so on. But usually I don't like to do that. I prefer to tweak it in the real lighting rather than just grading it, because the grade should be generally something very, very, very subtle. And I don't also like to do this big teal and orange kind of thing too much. Better to keep it more natural. Because, you know, like some people go into the shadows and they'll tweak it so all the shadows look blue like this, and then it's like, I don't know, it just looks very it can look good. I mean, to be honest, there it looks actually pretty good, but I'm like, don't do it, and then I'm like doing it a bit myself. But you can come in and make the shadows a little darker. Like that works for some reason. That works. So I think that's good. I'm going to keep that. But I didn't go too blue. I went a little bit blue and a little bit down in the shadow. So taking the shadows down just a tad. And also the other thing you can do is tweak the amount of, where they start to shadow. But yeah, you can tweak that too. I just realized we're supposed to be showing off our log cabin here, and I'm not sure if my lighting really does show it in its best light. Maybe that is better. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to come out of my camera, and I'm going to actually, this is what I do sometimes. I tweak how the shadows work. So, okay, you see this big tree? It's making a shadow. I just take that tree, and let's make another shadow. You see how I'm making the shadow over that? Because I don't like that I was running out of shadows. So I just want to make another shadow here. Right? And I make another shadow here. So to kind of block off a few things. Obviously it means that the shot only really works from that way because I've made all these trees here that are just way too big. But I don't know. It doesn't really matter. If it's just for ArtStation, right? And we're only going to be posting it from one angle, it's fine. If it was an example scene, though, I'd have to find some other way to do it without doing that. Okay, so I think that lighting looks much better. Let's go back into our camera. Yeah, we're getting closer now. Let's have a look at how it looks with the LOD distance scale on. Looks good. Looks cool. I think I need to break up the grass a little bit. I'm going to take the landscape sculpt the texturing tool, and then I'm going to tweak the density of the grass just by putting a few little foresty areas around it. Maybe this guy wouldn't have so many rocks outside of his porch, but just a few is okay. Here and there. Here too, maybe. Oh, yeah, we definitely need to... Of course, that's the thing that's missing. We want the road. Yeah, I keep saying this, and this is in some of the other tutorials as well, which is that the grass types are also... you can actually remove them using this remove procedural layer. So just either find the layer info or just add your own weight blended... sorry. This is one situation where instead of a weight blended layer, you want to put a non-weight blended layer. So I'm just going to make a new one, non-weight blended, save it. And now I can paint down this thing, make it a bit smaller here. I got the radius here and here. That's impressive. 2 ways to change the radius now. I'm sure they'll unify these tools at some point and make it so that there's only that one. So that will be really straightforward in the future. Okay, let's see where we're at now. Oh, wow. So now we can actually see the road going off into the distance. Much, much better. Let's save the scene. And I'm going to go back to my camera where I've got my nice post-processing effects and stuff. Okay, great. So this part of the video I've sped up a little bit. I wanted to add more detail to the scene. So to do that, I'm using Quixel Bridge to import Megascans directly into UE4. Megascans are a really amazing way to add photorealistic details to your scenes. So you can see here that I've got the Quixel Bridge open, and I'm just sort of searching for items like this medieval modular door, and clicking the download button, sort of waiting for that to download, and importing it then into the engine. What's so impressive about Quixel Bridge is that it'll automatically export the stuff to engine, and then it'll all just come in and pretty much just work. So there you can see I've basically just replaced the sort of crappy looking door that we modeled earlier with a completely photorealistic one. So, I mean, the modeling stuff was great to get these sort of basic proportions of the house, but, you know, there are definitely some additional details that scans are going to give us, you know, that obviously we're never going to be able to sort of hand model directly in the engine. But the really cool thing with the in-engine modeling tools was that it allowed me to get this really nice block out that I can now use as a sort of basis for, you know, replacing certain parts or covering certain parts with these photorealistic scanned assets. So like this side section of the house, you know, for the roof, I'm just kind of slotting it in there, and it fits really nicely just by sort of scaling it around and trying to find a decent positioning. And then I always check how it looks from the, you know, the main shot, just to double check that I like how how it feels. And it's really cool. It's like being a kid in a candy store with this sort of library. You know, there are thousands of assets, and they're all just super high quality. And being able to just one-click export them into Unreal Engine is just amazing. And by the way, all of these assets are completely free if you're using Unreal Engine 4. So if you're using, UE4 and you just want to create awesome little details in your scenes, this is the way to go about it. And you can see as well that I'm not really doing anything to these assets. They're just coming in completely raw, and they're already pretty much good to go. Here I've actually downloaded one of the Megascans textures for these sort of roof tiles, and I'm just replacing the textures in my own material instance and just sort of setting them up with the roof so that they look more realistic. See, I'm just playing around with the colors and the tiling and trying different texture maps. And this is how the roof looks from the main shot. So I pretty much matched the same color that I had in the block out. The next thing I wanted to do was actually find some 3D roof tiles. Yeah, I kind of got distracted, I think, by working on the porch. I was just grabbing all kinds of different stuff, to be honest. Like every time I'd look through the library and just find something, like I found this axe and I thought like, wow, this could be cool. Maybe a woodcutter's axe somewhere. Not sure if I used that in the final thing actually. But it's just really cool because it kind of gets your creativity going. When you see these sort of assets, you're sort of inspired. Like, what if this? I was thinking like, what if this log cabin is really sort of a woodcutter's hut? Like he's using it to chop wood and sort of living in the country. I found this really nice tile rubble, which was really useful for creating these nice sort of broken up corners. And you can see I sort of match the color and the material up so that it matches my block out material. Because actually the block out material, I actually ended up using that in the final thing because it just looks good enough, to be honest. It's just a tiling concrete texture, and then as long as you use these Megascans to sort of break up the edges a little bit, yeah, it's pretty much good to go. For speed arts like this, I try not to overcomplicate things, I mean, I'm working at a relatively fast pace and I just want to, make sure that I get a bigger picture before I work on these little details. So sometimes you'll get to the point where you've got the bigger picture and you realize, actually, I don't really need anything more. And so, putting all this time into lots of little details doesn't really make sense. That's why I sort of work on all the different parts of the image and all of the different parts of an asset all at the same time, because I'm sort of just like trying to get them all up to the same level of detail, and then I'll look again at the overall image and I'll think like, oh, does that need to have a bit more detail at this part, or do these things hold up, or does that hold up? How's the roof looking? How's the door looking? How's the porch looking? How are the fences looking? How is the pond looking? That's what's sort of running through my head when I do these scenes. I really love the way that this log pile looks. It's very interesting, all the different shapes, and they're all real logs. That's what makes it really amazing. It's just like, yeah, it's so much detail. Very cool. I actually used this asset quite a lot, because I even duplicated it and used it in the foreground, I think. And then back to Quixel Bridge to try and search for something else we can use. So what am I looking for? Logs. You can see all the stuff I've been downloading from that little menu. Now I'm just searching for a window. So I found this sort of medieval window, yeah, putting some more foreground logs. I really think the foreground was super important on this one. Like, just to have a little bit of hint of something in the very, very foreground really helps to make the image. Okay, so finally getting this medieval door in. Medieval window. And I actually found a better one by searching for doors, and actually used that one instead as a window. So I used a door piece as a window piece, which, it's something great that you can actually do with Megascans a lot, which is just, if you find something that looks better, just use it, and no one's going to know if that's meant to be a door, right? Like it looks like a window, it opens up, it's basically fine. And I'm really just scaling the assets so that they fit to my block out, and then yeah, that's really it. And I think, yeah, I did actually use 2 different door and window meshes. And these little logs I just kind of placed along all of the sides. to give a little bit of variety, you know, to make the edges not look so monotonous, like there's something that's, you know, sort of propping the building up and holding it up. I did try some experiments with these roof tiles, but they didn't actually work out because I found the overall texture a bit too monotonous. I probably could have used a decal or something to sort of break them up, but just generally, I don't know, I just didn't like the look of it. It just looked very noisy, and actually decided to go back to the sort of texture approach. And yeah, you'll see the sort of solution I come up with in the end. So I went with something more like these little clay tiles, and my idea was to sort of just pepper the top of the roof with those. And I also went with a more uniform texture instead of the previous one. But yeah, this was just really like placing the tiles, you know, in a kind of odds and even way that made it look like maybe some parts of the roof were broken. And that was the general idea behind this. I found my hexagonal logs looking a little bit weird at this point. Obviously, the texture work isn't that great on them, so I decided to replace those with the Megascans logs, because they're just one of those things that really needs additional detail. Wood is a very tricky material to get right, so if it's possible to use scan data, that'll make a big difference. So I actually went through and added the logs to pretty much all of the ones that are going to be facing the sort of front face of the house. I did leave the other ones actually, so yeah, some of the original model was actually used here. I also adjusted a bit this little wooden log to make it sort of break up the edge of the roof a bit. That it looks like there's some sort of drainage pipe or something like that, maybe something that collects the water at the bottom of the roof. But you know, if you look closely, it's just a log, but there is something to it. And then I started experimenting with maybe I could replace, you know, some of the logs here on this mesh and just make them look a little bit nicer with the scanned logs. And yeah, I think that works really well. You know, if there are assets in your scene you can replace with something from Quixel, then it's all good. With the Megascan stuff, you generally have to sort of assemble the stuff yourself, which is obviously really time consuming. But, you know, that's why we got, you know, N-Engine modeling tools to kind of block things out first and then, you know, go in later and add the Quixel stuff on top and, you know, give some details that way. I think this block out method is a really nice way to work because it sort of separates the complexities. So for instance, you know, if you're given all these little bits and pieces from Quixel library and you're like, whoa, how do I build a house out of this? You know, that's a bit more daunting than like if you've already got a simple model or a mesh of a house that's already built and blocked out in the engine, and then you're just simply like adding things on top and replacing the parts that you really think need the detail. So yeah, I think it's a really good way to work, is to always like kind of white box things out, block things out, and you know, even better if you've got a, you know, master material like the Brushify master material, then you're able to actually texture some of those models that use them in your block out and use them as kind of like a canvas, you know, because I haven't actually replaced all of the stuff in this hut. You know, some of that stuff that you're actually seeing, some of those pixels are, you know, they're final pixels in my final artwork, but they're also, you know, from that block out mesh that we originally made in Unreal Engine, you know, using the master material shader, with some Megascans thrown on top, obviously. But like, yeah, it's just a very, you know, very cool way to work when you can kind of block things out first. So I wanted to add a few details around the pond. So I got some pond lilies from the Megascans library. And here I'm just sort of painting them down in clusters around the pond. I found the little axe from earlier and had a little bit of a play around with it, but I couldn't get it really working. I don't know, it's something kind of cliche about just having an axe in a log that, I don't know, I find really abhorrent for some reason. Like, I've seen so many artworks where there's like, I've made an axe in a log, and it's, I don't know, I've just seen it so many times before that I felt like it was too generic, too overused. So I just got rid of it in the end. But yeah. And also, you know, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you leave your axe in a log outside? Like, it's your axe. You would keep it back in your cupboard, right? Like, you wouldn't, you'd have it in a shelf somewhere, or, yeah, it's stored. So, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. People don't leave their tools just lying around the place. And that's one thing to think about when you're building scenes for games. Does it make sense? When you're building scenes for anything, does it make sense? Does it actually work? There's no point putting all this effort into a completely sort of photorealistic scene, and then you leave like a really obvious detail in the scene, like an axe lodged in a log that the guy would obviously have I've never done. I actually did try it. You can see that I've got the little cliche right there. But yeah, I don't know, just didn't work. Just didn't like it. But it's up to you to try different things. Find different ideas and experiment with stuff. I try things and I find they don't work, or I don't like them, or they don't make sense, and then I'll change it and I'll go back and I'll try and make it make sense. But yeah, this is one of those cases where it was just a bit of a strange thing. In the end, I actually settled on this little wheelbarrow because I thought that was just about the right thing that someone might leave outside on a summer's day. It doesn't make that much sense, but it's a little bit more sense than leaving your prized axe. So it's a bit of an old, broken down wheelbarrow anyway. So I don't think it's something that and obviously they don't have a shed. So yeah, sort of made a bit more sense than having an axe there. And I decided to fill it up with some of these little bits of firewood, so it looks like they've really prepared some of these logs, and they're going to kind of bring them back, use them as fuel for the fire, which is the whole point of cutting wood, right? I mean, of course, selling it as well, but using it for fuel. Obviously can take a while to adjust different things, and I was really careful about how I place these to make them a little bit more readable. You can see me really minutely tweaking, how they fall into that wheelbarrow and how they sit. Not that they sit unnaturally. I wanted it to feel like they really fell in there, or they were really at the bottom of the wheelbarrow touching it, because that can be something that makes and breaks the sort of realism of a scene. Is like if you've got something that looks a bit weird or floaty, that's just not quite right. Then it can ruin everything, because especially if it's a part that your eye is drawn to, like that wheelbarrow, it's in sort of one of the focal points of the image. So yeah, it's got to be perfect. I also spent a long time fiddling around with the rocks around the pond, trying to get the right sort of level of detail versus sort of minimalism. With I looked at sort of beach rocks, but I always find that they were a bit noisy, and obviously this isn't really a beach. Like it shouldn't really be complete sand. It's still sort of soil. It's just a little bit lighter soil and a bit finer soil, because it's been, I guess eroded by the water. So, there's still some things to think about there. And obviously you don't want to just completely pile lots of noisy rocks around the whole pool, and the whole pond. And you don't want to have too big a rocks, because that might kill the scale and it just looks very strange. So these ones from the Thailand rocks, I tried them and they just didn't work. I was just finding they were way too black and didn't match the scene at all. I was thinking sometimes when you do try things like that, it's like, oh, these are some rocks from Thailand, I'll try them in this scene, and then you try them and it's like, oh, well, it's not working because it's exactly what I expected. But sometimes it does work. You sometimes can find situations where the Megascans assets fit well into scenes where they're not really intended, or locations they weren't really scanned from. But yeah, I found this really nice mossy embankment, which is just perfect for forests. And I thought I would just try a few of those, sort of scattered around the scene, to break up the sort of landscape material and make it have a bit of color variation and a bit more sort of real world detail. So I did find some rocks as well to place, but I scaled them right the way down, and I made sure I really embedded them into the landscape, to make sure that they're not sort of obvious. So lots of duplication, lots of adjustments, placing something somewhere and then, deciding you don't like it. And that's really what it's all about. It's just a lot of consideration. And a lot of practice. The great thing is that you can do a lot of set dressing, and if you just focus on set dressing for a few years, and you consider reference, and you looking at your set dressing, and then if you've done a lot of artwork, it becomes second nature to you to sort of look at a scene and then decide, this doesn't look right, this is too big, this is too small. How should these be placed? Should they be bigger to smaller, smaller to bigger? Yeah, like for instance, these little lilies in the pond, I just made them way too big before. So, I decided to sort of scale them down and then also darken them a little bit because they were just kind of sticking out a bit too much from the image. It didn't really work, didn't really make sense. And the stuff from Megascans is all color calibrated, and that's amazing. But there are times where you'll find that you just for some reason need to just dial it down, even though it's physically inaccurate. You'll just find like, actually, this doesn't really look real. It doesn't really look right. The light's hitting it in a certain way, and it's just making it too bright. So bend the rules. Don't try and stick to this 100% everything physically accurate. Artistically, you've got the ability to really take things and get full creative control over them, and you should. These pieces were really amazing, and they gave tons of detail. I brightened them up a little bit to make them sort of match in with the terrain. But this is the sort of real detail that you just can't really get anywhere else other than a scan. So at this point, I've pretty much think I've finished. I didn't really want to sort of keep tweaking this forever and ever and turn it into this huge long project. Just wanted it to be this sort of couple of hours where I sat down, made something, put it out, and obviously things that are really, really impressive will get more attention, but there's also a limit to this. If you really want to get good, you definitely need to make lots and lots of quick little scenes like these, and rapid fire, right? You don't want to be doing one long piece that's going to take months and months and months. At least not at the very, very start. The other thing is to search for perfection and realize that you're never going to actually find it. Nothing in this world is perfect. Even if you get this perfect computer-generated procedural image that, is theoretically, mathematically perfect, you're still looking at that image through a monitor, and that monitor is emitting photons, and those photons are passing through the air, which has dust in it, and there are all of these things that will make something not perfect. It will never be perfect. So at some point you have to decide, this is my art, this is good enough, we'll try and make something that's even better next time. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and, sort of seeing the process of this little scene coming together in Unreal Engine 4. If you guys are interested in creating your own cool little 3D scenes like this, I highly recommend grabbing Unreal Engine, grabbing some Brushify packs, and getting stuck in, because I think it's really cool. It's a very creative thing to do. And if you can get through the initial stages of sort of learning the software and understanding the tools, all of that stuff, it can be a really relaxing process. If you like these sort of long form videos and you want to see more of this stuff, consider subscribing to the channel, and there'll be more content like this on the way. Joe Garth, signing out.